What is up, guys? We're taking a break from the top 5s today to look at which role is actually the best to carry with in Season 6. Before any of you rage at me, let me just say that you can carry with every role, but some are just more effective than others, and this is for general solo queue. First up, the best role in my opinion is jungle. The game is more mid-game focused at the moment, and early leads are going to matter way more. Junglers are strong in general early to mid mostly, then they kind of fall off a bit later because they have a lack of minion farm and they don't really have as much gold as others unless they are fed. The main thing we're focused on really is they can affect every single lane. They can help losing lanes, they can snowball winning lanes, and they can have a huge impact in the game. The thing that most junglers are doing right now is they often just pick two lanes, like mid and top or mid and bot, and they stay around that side of the map, either on the top side or the bottom side. When you're ganking these particular lanes over and over again, you have a lot of pressure. The enemy is going to play differently, they're going to get behind, and you can just kind of appear in these lanes, gank and help get towers, and you're more responsible for dragon calls too. That's more of the overall stuff, the overview I guess, but honestly there is a load of damage packed into a lot of junglers right now. They can 1v1 the enemy laners a lot of the time, they get pretty tanky, they're often the engaged champions too, so you can pick good fights for your team and make sure they don't pick bad ones. Taking our second spot is the mid lane, and mid lane is all about the mid game really. Funny how that works, right? And the way I normally think about it is the mid lane carries the mid game and the AD carries carry late game. If you think about all the champions that we put mid lane, they rely on abilities and ranks in those abilities for their damage. They're often the highest level in the game because they're in a solo lane, which means they're going to get rank 5 in their main ability first, and that is a big spike in damage. Specifically, if we look right now in Season 6, they just deal so much damage and have such a big impact in the game. Poke champions are pretty popular and they can deal damage from range, basically controlling the game and making it really hard for the enemy team to do anything without losing health. Burst champions, specifically like burst mages, will just, well, burst people basically and kill them over and over again. Assassins are just going to roam around the map and kill people, ideally constantly creating a 5v4 game, which is really easy to then take objectives and snowball with. This is another thing too, okay? Like junglers, mid lane has easy access to both top lane and bot lane and can easily roam if they need to. They can turn around ganks, or they can just carry on snowballing the game and pick up a few kills. The game right now is very centered around damage than anything else. Like if you think about it, we're having damaged top laners, damaged junglers, damaged supports even, and damaged mid laners obviously. This might eventually change with the meta, actually it probably will change, but for now nobody does more damage mid game than the mid laner. Third spot, AD carry, and okay, real talk for a second, we're getting pretty boned this patch, honestly. Everyone does so much damage and it's very hard for us to keep up and stay relevant, but luckily we can fall back on more kitey champions and still kick some ass. Your lane phase matters way more now. We need to get ahead or at least be farmed to be able to keep up with the powerhouse junglers and mid laners. This isn't too bad though, most of the popular AD carries right now have good lane pressure and good kiting, which is what we're after. I did say earlier, AD carries are late game really, but with a lead we can kind of just accelerate us to that build earlier. In big team fights, AD carries are really the difference, and it's a funny thing actually, we can either carry quite hard or we don't need to really do anything. If our jungler and mid laner are fed, then they normally just burst the fight and it's over very quickly, but if they don't, then it kind of falls back to us to do most of the work. In a nutshell, I guess really, AD carry is tough right now because of how much damage everyone has, but we can have a really big impact if we don't die. That sounds kind of dumb, right? But if we get ahead in lane, we focus on our farming, then we'll be strong mid still, and that's why we're at number 3. Fourth, top lane, and this could actually be higher, and at higher elo it definitely is, but just for general solo queue we're gonna stick it here. Top lane is an island, it's very isolated, it's hard to roam, and you're basically focused on beating your opponent while not dying to their jungler. Thing is, if you hammer your opponent you become a monster, you're really hard to stop, you're pushing constantly, and it's one of the best lanes actually where the jungler can't gank anymore. Like that's when you have a huge impact. The thing is, other lanes don't need to get stupidly fed to have huge impacts though, and if you do just okay in top lane, then you tend to not really do as much as other lanes. The other problem is you tend to be a bit more team reliant. Like with an AD carry in a mid lane especially, you can do damage from range, but with top lane you are mostly just all in. Like what I mean is you have to have kind of a full on fight to do anything, and if your team is behind then that doesn't really work for you. So last up, support, and let me just say, okay, I like playing support. I carry with support and you can definitely have a big impact in the game. The reason it's last is because you're an enabler. You enable your team to do things, you set up kills for them, you make plays, you let them do their job easier. The problem is if your team are just full of muppets, then they won't be able to do anything with what you create. The good thing though, in Season 6 you can carry harder than before. Lane phase matters way more now, and supports are often the ones that make the difference and win the lane for the AD carry. Once you have that lead, you can then roam, you can set up team fights, and hopefully you keep the game snowballing. Like, yeah, some games you might get bad teams and there isn't much you can do, but when you do get a half decent team, then you can definitely make the most of it more. The bad thing really is that you can't affect the rest of the map until later into the game. Unlike the other roles here, if your lanes get behind, there isn't really anything you can do. As a final thing, please don't let this put you off playing support. You might need to work a little harder for your LP, but if this is your best role, then you can definitely climb with it. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, comment, share, and for now, I'll leave you with the robots.